Welcome back to Extra Holiday Games. I'm Extra Holiday, and bet you thought we were done with Holocure, didn't you? No, I've been planning this video for a while. Hi. It's me, Extra Holiday, and you may or may not be able to tell, but this, unlike the last video I did on Holocure tier lists, and I guess the only other one, this is not being streamed, mostly because I have significantly fewer characters to talk about, since this is just kind of an update to the previous video. If you haven't seen the previous video, it is on the channel, Extra Holiday Games, which is the channel you're currently watching. It's not hard to find if you go to the channel. It's got a very similar name, and it's one of the most viewed videos on this channel as of right now. So, yeah, this is just kind of an update for version 0.7. Some things changed, a lot of things didn't. As you can see here, I put a tier for characters who really weren't changed much from a beginner's perspective by this update. It's most of the characters, basically all of them, aside from 3 and the new characters that were added. Wait. Noel, you're on the wrong spot. Noel, you're supposed to be here. Yes. Okay. Yeah, 3 characters and then the new ones. And I'm not only considering... Well, here's the thing. I am pretty much only considering changes to the characters themselves, because, yes, there were new items added, yes, there were new mechanics added in version 0.7, but most of those aren't going to be stuff that people are going to be engaging with right away. So that's kind of my methodology. That's why I'm just going to be talking about what changed on the character specifically, for the 3 that aren't new. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Hakos Baelz. Hakos Baelz, I put pretty far down in the tier list before. She was D tier before. I think that might have been a little too harsh. Personally, most of my previous placements I still agree with, but I think I might have been a little too harsh. She could probably have been C tier anyway, but with this version, she got buffed. She got an adjustment to one of her abilities that gives her special gauge on crit, which does emphasize more her crit focus, which, as I mentioned in that video, in the previous stream, crit isn't typically super available to newer players, but the more obvious it is that you should be building crit on her, the better it is for a new player to be able to more easily pick up on what the right build is for her. So this also allows newer players to build Idol Costume, which you can unlock as early as your 3rd run. So, all that considered, Bae actually moves up from D to C. I still think her lack of defensive ability is pretty limiting for newer players, but she did get slightly better with this update, and I probably was a little too harsh before. On the opposite end of the spectrum, AZKi was S rank before, largely because she had a very simple kit, like her skills were very simple, and as a result you could kind of just build anything on her and she would be just generally strong. I will start by saying I think how AZKi is now is much more interesting than how she was prior to this patch. She's a lot more interesting to play, she's a lot more interesting to build, but also as a result, she's a lot less friendly to newcomers. Now she really wants skill damage. That's kind of the main thing that she wants, and skill damage isn't something you can come across easily as a new player. So, and there's also probably the biggest change. Her new ability, Geographer, is very easy to misinterpret. I did it myself initially when I was looking at her reworked skills. It's very easy to read the ability as like, oh, I have to stay in these circles to keep these buffs that it's giving me. When in reality, you only really need to dip into the circles once every 5 seconds, basically. And I think that mentality, even just having to dip into the circles, I think is probably not great for a newer player because they're already going to be having trouble navigating around enemies. So having to do that while also trying to stay in the circles is, as I mentioned with Shion in the last tier list, in the previous version of the tier list, it's pretty tough. It's probably harder with Shion than it is with AZKi, but it's pretty tough for a newer player to try to navigate enemies and staying in a certain area for optimal buffs. So AZKi is gonna drop pretty far down on the tier list. Probably the biggest change of the three. Actually, definitely the biggest change of the three. That we'll be talking about from the previous tier list. Yeah, she's still not terrible for newcomers, I would say. Largely because she does still have a little bit of that generalist build that she can do. And the buffs she does get, she gets both offensive and defensive buffs, which I think is very good for newer players. So, we are going to put her in C tier with Bae. Bae went from D to C, AZKi went from S to C. Slightly different stories, but now we move on to Vestia Zeta. There were other characters, by the way, that did get some changes from the last patch to 0.7, and there also have been hotfixes since 0.7, which I looked at as well. But with the other characters, either their changes weren't super significant, or essentially they weren't significant enough to change the tier that I had put them in previously. And that's the same with the hotfix changes. Although the new characters I will be basing on their current version, because they also got adjusted by hotfixes. So, getting back to Zeta. Zeta was already pretty decent. She was, crit build, experience build, which is build-wise not great for a newer player because you don't get a lot of crit, and Study Glasses, Researcher's Coat, Body Pillow is not super obvious from the get-go. But she has a lot of invulnerability. She did and does have a lot of invulnerability. So, previously she was in B tier, because she wasn't, build-wise she wasn't great, but her skills gave her quite a bit of durability, actually. She, like many characters in this patch, got buffed. Now, instead of... let me Let me double check. So the way that her ability worked prior, cat reflexes, that's probably how you would say it, is basically it just gave her crit, and then she got more crit when she was invisible. Now she actually has on crit scaling. They changed the ability so that instead of just giving crit and more crit when invisible, it's after landing 10 crits, in addition to also giving more crit chance, she gains a stack of stealth shot where the silent pistol turns into the wide shot version that she has when she is invisible. Or when she... I think she still has it when she uses her special and is invisible now. Does it say that? It doesn't say that in her special, but essentially it gave her an on-crit ability that makes her attacks more reliable, rather than simply just giving her crit chance. So ultimately, this does emphasize the fact that you should be building crit on her more, but it also gives her haste scaling, which she didn't have. And again, it gives her a more reliable main weapon. So, it's not a huge buff, but she was already kind of at the top of B tier. So I think this buff probably puts her at the bottom of A. You can't see the rest of A tier here, but I will post the full tier list with everyone in their places on Twitter. Well, yes, Twitter, but also Blue Sky. You should check out my Blue Sky more, because Twitter. So yeah. Here is Zeta in A tier. Now we are on to the new characters. And this is where things get pretty interesting. Because I think some of the new characters are very good for new players, and some of them are real bad. So, we are going to start with Usada Pekora. Pekora is an interesting character. She's another one of these greed characters, right? Who gain some sort of benefit from getting holo coins. Which, as I've noted in the previous tier list, is very attractive to new players. In fact, the fact that it's so attractive is kind of why I put Risu as the worst character for beginners. Because she is a greed character with no defensive tools. Pekora, on the other hand, is probably the only greed character. Actually, I say probably. She is the only greed character who gets defense from coins. The coins, when she picks up coins, the coins heal her. So, it is of all the greed characters, Pekora is probably the safest. There might be an argument for Marine, but Pekora is probably the safest. That being said, she is also a crit character, right? She wants to build crit. Crit gets her coins. And also damage, of course. So she wants crit. She wants special cooldown, because special cooldown also gives her more coins. And the unfortunate thing is, you just don't get as many coins in the earlier levels, because there's just not as many enemies. So, she actually scales pretty well with the difficulty of the stage that you're in. But for beginner players who are mostly playing Stage 1 and Stage 2, you don't really see a lot of that. I mean, you're still going to benefit from getting coins and healing from them. And it's also worth noting that at least Super Chat time, but I think also Piggy Bank. Maybe I can check this. I'm fairly certain that Stolen Piggy Bank and super chat time are both things that need to be unlocked later. They unlock pretty early, but it's unlocked by completing the payday achievement. Right, okay. So let me see. Stolen Piggy Bank. Defeat a Golden Yago. Okay, so that one's not hard to get. And then Super Chat Time. That might be available from the start, actually. Yeah, looks like it is. Maybe. Hold on. Yeah, okay, so Super Chat Time is available from the start. And Piggy Bank is unlocked pretty easily, right? You just kind of have to get lucky. And, you know, within 6 or 7 runs, you'll probably run into a Golden Yago. So, the greed part is fine. The crit part, you still need to put in a little effort to get those items. But ultimately, the fact that she is a greed character that has some defense, to me, makes her pretty alright. I think, where do we put Miss Usada Pekora? I think she probably goes in. We can also talk about her other abilities. Pyromaniac. It's just AoE damage, which, you know, with a set chance that also scales with her crit because of her other ability, Lucky Bunny, where she gains luck for crit chance, and also gains a chance at increased attack size. So ultimately, the fact that her kit has attack size in it and a pretty reliable AoE, based on crit, but she's pretty solid, I would say. I think, I think because Pekora is probably the safest character to farm coins with, well, aside from that actually gets extra coins, I should say. I think she probably goes in the A tier, because not only is she relatively easy to play, but she can also get you more coins to get more upgrades, and so I'm gonna put Pekora in A. Now, Houshou Marine is an interesting character. If you watched the various Holocure streams and videos that I did between the release of 0.7 and now, you might know that Marine is probably the character that has killed me most. I have probably the most deaths on Marine over any other character. However, that is I should say that is pretty much entirely due to the nature of one of her skills. That skill being Lust. So with Lust, you have a Lust gauge that builds up from either being near enemies or being hit. Maybe you can see now where the danger lies. But when your Lust gauge fills, you heal, and it does a bunch of damage to enemies nearby. So, if you're trying to optimize your damage, you want to get hit a lot. The great thing for new players is that they are getting hit a lot. But, if they are the type of player to really read into the ability, like I am, but less experienced, chances are, well, I mean, this happened to me too. This is why I died so much. Marine is a character where you really need to know your limits, and it's much harder to know your limits when you're just starting the game. She also potentially wants to build health, which isn't available right away, but pretty shortly after. And crit. She's also a crit character. Also, she's a greed character. She wants holo coins to get crit chance. It's kind of opposite of Pekora, where Pekora wants crit to gain coins versus Marine wants coins to gain crit. So, ultimately, she's kind of dangerous. Like, I say that one of her skills is named Dangerous Marine Smell. She lives up to the name of her skill. Because, yeah, she's also a melee character. Unlike Pekora has a little bit of melee bias, but Marine is way more melee biased than Pekora. And the other thing is, probably Marine's best source of coins is not actually the greed items. It is her main weapon, but only when it's maxed, when it's awakened. The unfortunate thing for new players in the case of Marine is that new players don't tend to max things out. They don't tend to focus on maxing things out. They tend to have a much wider build. So they're going to spend a lot of time not getting all the coins that they could be getting from the maxed out cutlass and pistol. That's her main weapon's name. So, if you do play Marine, you really want to max out that main weapon as soon as possible. In fact, the way I've learned to play Marine is that I max that out even before items. For most characters, I max skills first if I'm not Gachikoi on them, which I am Gachikoi on all of them now. And then I max items first, and then I max main weapon, and then other weapons. For Marine, that order is entirely different. It's skills. Again, I'm Gachikoi on her right now, so I actually don't have to do that. Main weapon, items, other weapons. Because I feel that maxing Marine's main weapon is so important to basically having damage. So yeah, I think Marine is at best not great for new players. She does have a heal, which is nice. So if they're not falling into the trap of I want to get hit as much as possible, which is kind of a trap. Again, you have to know your limits with this character. If you want to get as much damage as possible. If you're not trying to get as much damage as possible, it's alright. She's alright. I think that will probably put her in C tier for me. Because I feel like most new players aren't going to read into that skill too much. But at the same time, there are some who will, and, you know, her build is not... It's not super obvious what you should be doing with her build. So she's going in C tier, probably better for new players than AZKi. Is she better than Bae, though? Well, she does at least have defensive items, but her build isn't as obvious. Or defensive skills, I should say. And she does kind of want to build defensive items where Bae really doesn't. So I guess she's probably top of C, at least as far as these three are concerned. Okay. And now for a character who is just really good. For anyone, really. Although, I will say, she is probably slightly worse for new players than she is for intermediate or expert players. Largely because her skills aren't super attractive. They mostly give durability, which, I mean, if you've gotten your ass handed to you once or twice, you might be interested in. But it also probably isn't super obvious that that durability is going to give her damage, especially if you haven't unlocked Pimon yet. Because Pimon, for tank characters, is their main scaling, damage scaling. Actually, is Pimon available from the start? Pimon might be available from the start. I might have been wrong about that, or maybe they changed it. I don't know. Not seeing it in the achievement list. Oh, super chat time you do have to unlock. I was wrong about that earlier. A little addendum. But getting 5,000 coins isn't terribly hard. Yeah, so it looks like Pimon isn't unlocked. Okay, so you do get Pimon from the start. It's not... Her build isn't super obvious, but she still benefits, like... New players do tend to build a lot of durability anyway. The attack size scaling on her skills is pretty obvious. And, you know, if they decide to take her skills, she is pretty good. Her main weapon is solid. It's just if you're not building attack size, I was looking for, actually, that's what I was looking for when I was looking over here. I was looking for Nightly Milk, which I think is unlocked. No? No, it might not be. Okay. In that case... But Nightly Milk is kind of a rare pick. Breastplate I know is unlocked. Right. Hold on. Yes, Breastplate is unlocked. And that's her signature item along with Nightly Milk. How do you get Breastplate again? Let me see. Breastplate. Take a total of 500 damage. Yeah, you might have to go out of your way to get that one. Or just be really bad in one game. By the way, that's 500 damage in one game. In one run. So, that is... So ultimately, she's pretty good. If a new player is going to take her skills, which they don't always, she gets a lot of durability, and that durability also translates into damage. I am probably putting her in A tier. Top of A tier for, again, this list of the characters that have changed or are new. Because, yeah, it's having a bunch of durability and scaling with durability on damage is good. It's just a matter of whether the new player can put together that that's what they should be doing. Okay, Shiranui Flare. Okay. So, Flare does have an advantage when it comes to new players, in that she is a projectile scaling character. Projectile biased, if I want to be consistent with my terminology. Because, I believe this is still true, all of the melee weapons in the game, aside from spider cooking, all the melee weapons in the game have to be unlocked, and there's only 4 of them, but... so melee biased characters, which is also probably a reason Noel goes a little lower down, because she is melee biased, very melee biased even. But melee biased characters are a little worse for new players because they don't have the melee weapons unlocked from the start. Flare specifically has scaling with projectile weapons. She's projectile biased, so that is better for her. Unfortunately, that might be the only thing she has going for her as far as new players go. And even at as many hours as I've put into the game, which, if you're wondering at this point, is about 450, she's kind of tough to play. She has one defensive tool, but the unfortunate thing is that defensive tool, while it's up, gives haste, which is nice, but a new player is going to be getting hit a lot. And that defensive tool goes away when she gets hit a certain number of times. So when it's gone, you lose that haste. And the other damage that she has, and she wants, is skill damage. Unfortunately, skill damage is not something you're gonna build super early. You need Beetle, and you need GWS Pill on Flare for her to really, really kick into gear. Unfortunately, let's see, GWS Pill, I believe you tend to unlock pretty early. But Beetle, you might get it. Like, so the condition for getting Beetle is clear stage mode without having any character skills. And with fandom off. Which you might do just by accident, but it's not likely. You kind of have to go out of your way to get Beetle. And Beetle is probably Flare's best item. So, I mean, she does have defensive tools, but she also doesn't have a ton of damage if you don't have skill damage, and she loses damage if you get hit a lot. I don't think Flare's very good for new players. I also kind of think she's just not good in general, but especially for new players, I don't think she's particularly great. She does have the projectile stuff going for her, which is good, but not super amazing, honestly. Now, we move on to the legendary dragon herself, Kiryu Coco. Coco, talking about projectile versus melee bias, is melee biased, but not super melee biased. Specifically, she's melee biased because when awakened, her main weapon marks targets, and it's a melee weapon, so that they take more damage. Another unfortunate case, however, this is another unfortunate case of massive skill damage scaling. Again, you kind of have to go out of your way to unlock the Beetle, which is going to be your main source of skill damage, or of improving your skill damage, anyway. So unfortunately, Coco, like, a lot, probably most of her damage is skill damage. Even more so than Flare. She does have a little bit of durability, and she does have some very obvious parts of her build. Like, specifically, she heals from plug type Asakoko. So, and that's made very obvious in the text of the ability, of the skill. Well, it does say it's a chance, so it tends to be less appealing. And she does have some defensive scaling. She has percent max HP healing. So she has some things going for her. She has some defensive tools. She has some obvious parts of her build. But nothing... But her reliance on skill damage is kind of what drags her down here. I think she's probably better than Flare for new players, and probably also in general. But I don't think she's fantastic. Also, she's very reliant on her special. Coco is unique in the fact that you can use her special bar when it's not full. But new players tend to be hesitant to use the special bar even when it is full. So you don't really get much out of that as a new player who doesn't really know as much about what they're doing. So ultimately, with all that said, I think Coco, she's not terrible for a new player, but she's probably around the bottom of C. Yeah, she does have a lot of stuff that you specifically want to build on her. It's also very easy to forget. I even still forget that you can run injection type on her without losing health, which is a big source of damage for her. How do you unlock injection type again? Complete a stage using the plug. Okay, so it's relatively easy to unlock injection type, but a new player is definitely likely to look at injection type and be like, ooh, no, I don't want to run that. It's going to take HP for me constantly. Ooh, no. Forgetting the fact that Coco doesn't actually lose HP from injection type. So, we are moving on to Amane Kanata, who is a haste character. Now, I said previously in the other tier list that haste characters are kind of not super great. Ooh, I just realized GWS Pill is unlocked by losing with Holu, which is pretty easy to do. And new players do tend to pick up Holu when they shouldn't. So, I guess it is pretty easy to get GWS Pill. But you also have to unlock Holu, right? No, actually. You don't. Okay. I don't think. Hold on. No, you don't have to unlock Holu. Okay, anyway, we're digressing. So yeah, as I was saying, haste characters or on-hit characters, not super amazing for new players, largely because a lot of the stuff you want to build, especially now that Promise Tiara is a thing, a lot of the on-hit items you want to build are unlocked later. I'm trying to find where Candy Kingdom Sweets is, because that's the biggest on-hit item. And yeah, Kanata is definitely... Oh yeah, choose the haste setup option 10 times when leveling up. Yeah, that's not gonna happen until you specifically try to do it. Like, you really, really have to go out of your way to get Candy Kingdom Sweets. Promise Tiara sell 10 stamps in a run? Yeah, that's not happening for a new player. Those are the two main haste items. And then you also have Nightly Milk, which you have from the start. Corporation Pin, which, let me remind myself, reach 500% pickup range. Yep, definitely have to go out of your way to do that. And then Limiter, which you get pretty early, but it doesn't do anything without Corporation Pin as far as contributing to your on-hits. So, on-hit characters, not super great for new players because they just don't have the tools to optimize those characters. Now, Kanata does have healing. She does have healing. And I believe, let me double check, I believe it is % max health scaling. Yes. So, you can build tankier on her, and it's fine. She also has stuns, which is nice. She has some decent defensive tools, actually. So she's not terrible for a new player. Overall, I think she's pretty solid. But for a new player, she's not terrible. She's not gonna have the damage that you will want her to have, but she at least has defensive tools to stay alive. So, I think actually this puts her in B tier. Our first B tier today. She's not great for a new player, but she's also not terrible. Now, Tokoyami Towa. Towa. But Towa is another one of the characters like Flare, and for different reasons, like Marine. I actually had quite a bit of trouble with this character myself. Largely because Towa is another one of those characters who has pretty much no defensive abilities. She has a knockback that procs sometimes when enemies are near you. That's pretty much it. And her biggest thing is that she wants special cooldown. Her signature item is Devil Hat, which I don't remember if you have right from the start. I think you have to unlock it. Yeah, you have to unlock it. Deal over 1,000 damage one attack. That's not terribly hard to do. So you can get Devil Hat pretty early just by accident. But it's also not... I don't think it's super obvious that Devil Hat would be... maybe it is, but it's I guess somewhat obvious that Devil Hat works well on Towa, if you know how her special works and if you're willing to use her special, because as mentioned before, new players don't tend to want to use their special. Towa's, however, if they're actually reading the ability, is one that they will probably want to use. They might use it and waste it because you can activate it and then just keep losing ammo by not using it. Basically, the longer you go without using it, the less you can use it, which I guess applies to a lot of things, but ultimately it's easy to waste. But again, if they're really paying attention to how it works, then it's more obvious that you of a special to use just whenever and not just hold forever. Yeah, and Towa's biggest thing is she wants big hits, right? Special cooldown with Idol Costume, damage from activating special from Devil Hat, and then she just wants to make her attacks as big and damaging as possible. Crit is nice on her, but not totally necessary. But attack size, aside from special cooldown, attack size is probably her most important stat, which is not going to be obvious. She doesn't have, in fact, she doesn't really have anything that's specific in her skills and her special and her main weapon. Her kit doesn't really say anywhere that it scales with attack size, but that is kind of her best stat, again, aside from special cooldown. So, ultimately, not great for newer players because of the lack of defensive tools, because of the reliance on her special, and you know, the not so obvious build. I would probably she might be under Flare, actually. I think I'm definitely putting her in D tier. But as to whether her or Flare are better, Yeah, she just really doesn't have any defensive tools. So, although I will say, Mad Devilish, which is her knockback skill, does work better on the easier stages because enemies spend more time near you as opposed to actually hitting you. So it is a better defensive tool in the earlier stages than it is. It basically has like reversed scaling with the difficulty of the stages, because the faster the enemy, the less likely they are to get hit by the knockback before they actually hurt you. So, Towa, where does that leave Towa in relation to Flare? I think for the earlier stages, Mad Devilish might actually be a better defensive tool than Shiranui Construction. Well, maybe. They're pretty close. I think we can leave Towa here for now, but it's pretty close. They have kind of they're very similar characters, and they're both. Oh, that's one thing I forgot to mention with Flare. Flare is also very reliant on her special, because if she can't deal skill damage, then she wants to use her special to supplement that, get herself more projectiles through Elf Song. So yeah, special and skill damage is Flare's biggest thing. Special and attack size is Towa's biggest thing. Neither of them super great for new characters. Now, a character that is particularly great in general, but also for new characters, or new players, I should say. I'm actually thinking about it now, and maybe not as great as I thought. Because here's the thing. Watame wants healing. There is an unfortunate potential trap in her kit, though. The way Watame works is when she heals, she also heals the enemy. But when the enemies heal, they also take damage. And if her healing outweighs however much health the enemy has left, they're instantly defeated. So essentially, she is healing them to damage them. That might be a little hard to understand for a new player. They might avoid taking her skills because they say, oh, this ability heals the enemies. And that's potentially a bad thing. However, if they are able to interpret the kit as it's meant to be used, it's gonna be ultimately it kind of comes down to which skill they encounter first. If they encounter borderline nothing wrong first, which is the one that deals damage to targets that heal, aside from yourself, of course, then they're likely to get like, okay, this is a character who deals damage by healing people, or at least deals damage to people who heal. Then when they run into Have a Nice Day, which is the one that heals the enemy, they'll be like, oh, okay, so if I heal them, they'll take damage, and then it's basically like I never healed them at all. And they'll still be taking damage, essentially. I think ultimately because she does scale with healing, if a new player is willing to take her skills, which might be less likely than with other characters, then she's super good. Right? Like, I think overall, Watame is one of the best characters in the game, if not maybe the best. But it really, for new players, it really depends on whether they're willing to take the skills and whether they're willing to invest in the skills, ultimately. Not just take them, but also invest in them, because to get full effectiveness out of Watame, you really do need her skills. So, as far as characters go, and tiers go, we're definitely putting her in the A tier, right? She's definitely somewhere here in A. I think Watame... Noel is another character. I think Watame goes above Noel. Largely because healing is very attractive to new players, whereas just HP and % damage reduction aren't as much. So I think ultimately people are more likely to take Watame's skills over Noel's, or at least Watame Night Fever, which will keep healing them, at least. Other thing I forgot to mention with Watame, she has level scaling, which we talked about a little bit, I think, with Roboco and Ayame last time. But the thing with Watame is it's a little subtle. It's kind of, it almost feels like a throwaway line in one of her skill descriptions. I believe it is... Have a nice day. No, not have a nice day. Ah, yes, it's Watame Night Fever. It is the first line in the description, but it's not the most attractive line in there. All healing is increased by 10% per character level. That's at max level. Actually. Oh, yeah. That's weird. It's not colored green like it normally is when it scales with level. But anyway, she has level scaling. Not super obvious and not super attainable at an early range. But it does mean that you can build her with less healing and more level stuff. You have more options for the build. More items that work well on her. Which is good. Probably still keeping her right there, though. Okay. And now another character that gave me quite a bit of trouble. And our final character for this patch. Himemori Luna. So Luna is an interesting character. I talked... Who was it before? I talked about characters who don't necessarily want to... I don't think... Hold on, I'm looking at our roster here. So yeah, there aren't really any other characters like Himemori Luna in this game. In that Himemori Luna... I guess I'm just going to keep saying her full name. Luna wants to stand in one spot. Which is kind of how new players tend to play already. They tend to only move when they really need to. Well, more so than more experienced players, I'd say. More experienced players, I think, are going to be moving around pretty much constantly. Unless they're playing Luna. Because Luna is a character that is stronger when she's not moving. Ooh, I think we talked about this with Anya. Yes, because she has Slumber. So we talked about it with Anya, players not moving. For that reason, though, I don't think a lot of people are going to want to take Baby Princess, which is the skill that Luna has that gives her buffs for not moving. Because I think to new players, that's gonna look dangerous, right? So they're not gonna take that, most likely. Well, they're gonna be less likely to take it, I should say. Her other skills, Cute as Justice, probably more likely to be taken. And the other two skills together work well enough just on their own. Well, on their own as in they have synergy with each other. They don't really need Baby Princess to work. They do benefit from it, but they don't really need it. Because Cute as Justice is basically an occasional AoE around you that has a chance to stun and deals damage and has a chance to lower their HP. What does that mean? Oh, chance increases to 50% the lower their HP. Right. So, chance to stun increases the lower their HP is. That's not super important. And then with Na, her other skill, just first thing is it gives haste, which she really wants, and new players are going to be pretty lacking because, again, as we mentioned before, haste items are actually kind of hard to come by. And if a stun target is hit by an attack, there's a chance to create a crescent moon, which does damage. So those two skills work together pretty well, even just on their own, even without Baby Princess. Baby Princess, though, I feel is a dangerous looking ability, even though it is kind of her core ability. Her core skill, I should say. In addition, Candy Sword, her main weapon, not super, like, it's got enough range, like, angle-wise, that it's decently easy to hit with it, but it is a little weird to aim because it always starts from the top. It always starts from above Luna, basically. So hitting enemies below you actually becomes kind of weird, which is something that a new player who's already having to learn new things about a new game is gonna have maybe a little bit of trouble with. Ultimately, also, she doesn't, like, aside from the knockback on Cute as Justice, she doesn't really have any defensive abilities. She doesn't have healing, she doesn't have damage reduction. She has stuns. That was the other thing about Candy Sword, actually. A big part of Luna's damage, it comes from Candy Sword being able to stun, and especially Candy Kingdom being able to get a double hit on it, so that you might get a moon from, what was it, Na? On the double hit. The fact that Luna's core item is Candy Kingdom Sweets, and you really have to go out of your way to get that, is actually pretty bad for her. And she has stuns, but other than that, she really, and a little bit of a knockback, other than that, she really doesn't have any defense, and she's a non-hit character. And a melee character. So really, not great for new players. We spent a lot of time talking about how two of her skills are actually solid by themselves. But that's really the best she has going for her, especially for new characters, or new players, rather. Other than that, not especially great. I'm thinking I'm gonna have to put her in D. So, with that, this is the tier list of changes, characters that have been changed or are new in version 0.7 of Holocure. Unfortunately, we lost an S and didn't really gain any S's. We gained some A's though, which is nice. But ultimately, things kind of shifted lower. So, overall, I would say the game got a little harder for new players. But, hopefully, there's enough interest in the future that people are willing to... I mean, the game's fun anyway, even if you're losing. So, I think ultimately there is a solid chance that people will still push through and hopefully enjoy the game as much as I do. So, with that, we're probably not going to be talking about Holocure next time. Because, as for this tier list, and as for version 0.7, that's a wrap. See you next patch.